And there we are. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. This is Coffee Talk. So, welcome to Coffee Talk, where we will be hashing out some of what is going on in the world today, taking a look at some snippets from the news, some things that you might know, and some things maybe not so much. And of course, this is Coffee Talk, and you can find me at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, as well as Prepper University on YouTube, or at Coffee Talk Chat on Twitter. And Fistful of Radio, fistfulofradio.com. You can find Coffee Talk there Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon, unless otherwise specified. And for those of you who are listening and not watching, naturally, in the live portion that takes place on YouTube, I do read through as many of the comments as is possible so that you can keep up with the conversation and it doesn't sound like I'm just sitting here talking to myself. And I'll go ahead and acknowledge some of the people that have chimed in on the live portion so far. I see Helter is here, Dragon is here, Non-Weaponized Preparedness is here, Urban Angst, Gary Edwards, Boogers, KDS, Monkey, Cyberjack Sr., Donna Beaver, Zane is here. He says live chat was giving him grief, but now he's here. Well, you made it in. And Monkey says, can't wait to hear about the porn session that happened a few days ago in D.C. Did something happen? Did I miss it? Velvet Pilot is here. Brian is here. I'm not. Is it Ilowski? H12 is here. Preparedness Veteran. As people are starting to stumble into the channel. Hopefully you're sober. And we'll go ahead and dive off. And of course, got Dusty here, if we can find her. Where are you, Dusty? Keeping me company. Silly girl. I messed up the camera. As we get ready to dive into what's going on in the world today. And Monkey says, yeah, someone in the Senate and a staffer were filming a gay porno in the Senate area. Wow. I don't know if I caught that one. But, there's no dignity there anymore. The time of referring to people in Congress as the distinguished gentleman or the distinguished lady no longer really truly apply. Isn't that right, Miss Kitty? Miss Kitty doesn't want to stick around because Dusty's here and she doesn't like her. They have no dignity of office. I mean, they don't even have a dress code anymore. They threw that out in favor of Fetterman because Fetterman is uncomfortable wearing a suit. Like anybody cares. Dude, it's part of the job to try to represent your constituents as dignified as possible. But I guess that doesn't matter to Fetterman. So shorts and flip-flops and a hoodie are good enough, or whatever he wears. It's just good enough. But, speaking of corruption in politics, we'll start off with Hunter Biden. No, say it isn't so. Hunter Biden did something corrupt. Maybe not necessarily, but somebody did. Fox News has this one. It says GOP will absolutely push to meet with Hunter Biden's sugar brother who paid his millions in taxes. I don't know if you heard this or not, because he had like major tax problems. Somebody paid it off for him. Somebody took care of Hunter Biden's taxes. Hunter Biden's financial and personal ties to Hollywood mega attorney Kevin Morris, who is accused of lending him millions of dollars to pay off back taxes, remains in House Republicans' crosshairs. From what the IRS whistleblowers have highlighted, they, that is Biden and Morris, just got to know each other about 2 months before he paid roughly $2 million into Hunter Biden's tax returns, but he had been known as a big Democrat supporter and donor Hollywood attorney. Missouri Representative Jason Smith, Republican, told Fox News Maria Bartiromo on Sunday. The question is, why would Kevin Morris pay almost $5 million for tax filings and also to subsidize Hunter Biden's lifestyle. What is Kevin Morris getting from Hunter Biden or from Joe Biden? These are things that we need to look into. An email from Morris to accountants working with Hunter Biden, dated February 7th, 2020, 3 weeks before Super Tuesday, warned, "We are under considerable risk personally and politically to get the returns in. The only political risk is Joe Biden," Smith said of the email. And that's exactly why the IRS whistleblower wants to look into campaign finance crimes and into Joe Biden's campaign. But the Justice Department has refused to do it. Money Morris lent to Hunter Biden is part of the subject of a years-long Justice Department investigation into possible tax evasion and other potential crimes. Separately, reports indicate... Oh, it bounced. Hold on a second. Reports indicate he funded Hunter's lifestyle by flying him to an Arkansas child support hearing on a private jet and aiding with rent and living expenses, amongst others. So I don't know if anybody has heard that. I don't know if anybody's heard about that, but apparently this attorney has been paying off his tax debt and paying for his living expenses. This Morris, God, I wish that would stop doing that. I can't get the ad blockers to work. Kevin Morris, Hollywood attorney extraordinaire. And Keisha is here. Glad you could join us. And Zane says the suit's being phased out by everyone. Well, I like a good classic suit. Bingo is here. And he's asking how many people here see ties anymore. Yeah, people have gotten really casual. No dignity. And Preparedness says, wasn't there a money exchange in 2022? I believe there was. But there's still a lot going on there with all of that. And now they have a name, and the IRS says that he's paid about $5 million into it. Preparedness says ad blocker ultimate works wonders for annoying ads. Okay. I'll try to remember that and look into it. So here we have a big mega Hollywood attorney. I don't know very much about this guy or what he's worth, Kevin Morris, what his net worth is, how significant Kevin Morris is, what ties he has to the Biden family, why he would pay that. But, that is what they're trying to find out. But will it matter is the question. See, this makes no sense. Now I'm going to pull this up because I asked the question and I just looked it up because I was curious and I wanted to see. Here's Dusty. Dusty, everybody. We'll take a look at Kevin Morris's net worth. Here it comes. According to this, Kevin Morris. Oh, no, that's the wrong Kevin Morris. Never mind. I looked for the wrong Kevin Morris. I got some YouTube guy. This is who I want. Kevin Morris, the attorney. And it doesn't tell you. Oh, well, never mind. I was wondering how much money this guy had that he's lending that kind of cash out to somebody that he doesn't even know. Because, like it said, they had only met 2 months prior to his starting to pay off the taxes. The Dragon says, push to meet. How about issuing a subpoena? And even if they do, if they subpoena the guy and they get him before Congress and they have a nice long conversation and they ask him all kinds of questions and they find corruption, what's going to be done? Is Hunter Biden going to get punished? Is Morris going to get punished? Is Joe Biden going to get in any kind of trouble? What will be the outcome of it besides having wasted a lot of time and taxpayer money for something that they knew they weren't going to do? And H12 says he sees suits and ties all the time. And All People says Dusty looks relaxed and happy. Yeah, she's really easy to manage. Isn't that right, little girl? She's a good cat. She's a really good kitty. And she likes attention. The other cats pick on her. They bully her. But that would be my question. It's like, okay, you want to keep pursuing this and you want to keep pushing it to what end? What will be accomplished? What will come out of it? What will be done? What so-called justice will you accomplish? I can't see it. I can't see it because this kind of thing happens all the time and they make a big deal out of it and they waste a fortune on hearings and committees and all sorts of things like that. And it goes nowhere. No one's ever really punished. Nothing is ever really pursued. Oh, it gets exposed, but who the hell cares? Who cares really if nothing is going to get done about it? They're like, aha, look, Hunter Biden got caught up, and so what? And so what? And preparedness says I've got that Bond villain look right now. Yeah, that's right. Isn't that right, Mr. Wigglesworth? And that's what Donna says. Nothing will happen to any of the Biden family. And that's exactly it. That's exactly the problem. Nothing is going to happen. And I see hostile MGTOWs here, if I can even say that phrase without getting in trouble on this channel. YouTube doesn't like that, you know. They don't like it. But nothing's going to happen because nothing ever does. Even when they get caught up, even when they get in trouble. That's why I have made the point several times that, okay, we want to talk about, oh, we're going to impeach so-and-so. So what? So what if they do? You know, impeach somebody. And what happens because of that? Nothing. Nothing happens. Nothing occurs. Nothing changes. President got impeached. So we're going to impeach Biden. So it doesn't mean a damn thing. It means nothing. All People says, do you have an opinion about Tucker Carlson joining Rumble? Well, if he joins Rumble, at least he'll get an audience. You have to bring an audience with you to get anywhere on Rumble. You know, I've got a Rumble. It's pointless. It doesn't do anything. Nobody watches. You know, I might get like 10 views on a video. But yeah, if Tucker Carlson wants to join Rumble, I don't care. I don't really watch Tucker Carlson. I've seen a couple of snippets from him. I've read a couple of articles, but you know, I'm not like a fan, if you will. And H12 says their cat's been wandering around puking on everything all morning, time for a trip to the vet. Uh-oh. Did you change cat food recently? Sometimes that upsets their stomach. And Zane says corruption is too late to correct. Well, they don't want to correct it either because, you know, that opens the door for them to be investigated as well, because most of these guys in political positions are not going to be honest. They've got something going on. Right, Dusty? What do you think? Dusty agrees. And Zane says you have to get corruption while it's happening, not when it's done. Well, if they got it after the fact with you or me, we'd be screwed. But with these people, no. No, they don't. And Spectre has a commenting on Tucker Carlson. He says Tucker needs to start his own program and bring Levin with him. And of course, Zane says once the corruption has happened, the damage is already done. Yeah, it's already done. It's already over with. They'll pretend to pursue it, but they won't care. And if anything, they'll end up helping to cover it up in the end, which we're seeing here, which we're going to jump from Washington, I guess, to Boston. And this is an article from the Boston Globe. We talked about her last week, Claudine Gay, who is the president over at Harvard University. It says, did Claudine Gay plagiarize or not? Harvard should be clear. And before I even get into the article, because I don't always read these before I start talking about them, with Claudine Gay here, Harvard has now apparently redefined their concept of plagiarism to keep her in her position, because it has been discovered that she did plagiarize her papers to get her doctorate, which means her doctorate is not valid, which means that she, under the rules of plagiarism for Harvard University, should not have her position. But Harvard has made a few changes now. So it's like, okay, is she... What exactly is plagiarism then, Harvard? What's your point? And I'll read a couple more comments here and dig further into this. Gary says Hunter Biden is dirty underwear being waved as a distraction, like a magician's trick. Yeah, and there's a lot of distractions out there, absolutely. Urban says, with everything about the Bidens basically laid out for all to see, some folks will still vote for Democrats. Keisha says their cat has tons of personality, which is code for misbehaving. There you go. And Spectre says Mark Levin from Fox is who I was referring to. Okay. There you go. Let me see. So Boston Globe. It says the rest of American higher education looks to Harvard for guidance on academic norms. With the leadership role in mind, the university should clear away the uncertainty over how it is applied in its plagiarism policies to President Claudine Gay's past academic work and state clearly whether several of her papers ran afoul of the rules it expects students and professors to follow or not. Gay's scholarly publications have come under a microscope in recent months, and media outlets have flagged numerous examples of what appear to be nearly verbatim copying from other sources. Last week, the university's governing board released a confusing statement that appears to confirm a few instances of plagiarism without using that word. It said a review by scholars has confirmed instances of inadequate citation in Gay's work, but also that she did not violate standards for research misconduct. The statement also said she would be seeking corrections to add citations and quotation marks in 2 papers. This is interesting. Well, you can't Oh, you want to get down, honey? Okay, Dusty, go ahead. Go ahead, Dusty. Dusty wants to take a walk. So, first of all, if you plagiarized a paper, got your degree, moved on, got a job years later, okay? You don't sit there and say, oh, well, yeah, I plagiarized 10, 12, 15 papers 20 years ago. Yeah, I'll go back and fix that now. I'll make a couple of corrections. It doesn't work like that, okay? I couldn't do that. You couldn't do that. Second of all, wording. And I see the argument here about what Harvard is saying, the Harvard board. It says it's confirmed instances of inadequate citation. Inadequate citation would be if you were doing a bibliography for your work. So if you're quoting a passage which should be in quotations, or even if you're indirectly quoting, you've got to cite where your work came from, and you put a bibliography on the end of your paper. So naturally, she's not going to add a bibliography for something that she directly copied and plagiarized. So yeah, technically, there is instances of inadequate citation, but you're not confirming whether or not you're willing to admit she plagiarized the papers because everybody else says that she did. Wording is everything. Wording is key. Urban says, plagiarism will now have a modified definition like the definition of woman. And that's exactly what's happening here. Zane says, welp, time to go to Harvard. Yeah, it's going to be expensive, Zane. Yeah, Urban, indefinite definition. Helter says, I'm beginning to question whether Harvard has any steadfast standards. It appears the only standard that they are willing to stand for is DEI. The value of the brand Harvard is eroding at a fast rate. Most of these universities, unfortunately. Zane says he's going to become a doctor at Harvard with his favorite professor, Chat, got helping him to write papers. Yeah, Professor Chat, GPT Chat will write your papers for you. AI paper writing, which will be plagiarized anyways, because all that chatbot shit does is copy something from Wikipedia or somewhere else and then print it out. Might make it a little flowery or might add something odd to it. Those systems have been known to be dishonest. It's one of the biggest concerns about AI is it's dishonest. It can and will lie. And so you can't really fully trust it, or it will do something sneaky. As we talked about a couple of months ago, there was an article I was reading about, I know this is sidetracking a little bit, but just to make the point, a military experiment. I think it was the Air Force experimenting with drones, and they were unarmed live drones with AI running them. And there was an incentive for the drone to take out its target. However, incentives work with AI, I have no idea. But they had called off the mission, but the AI, because it wanted the incentive, didn't want to cut off the mission. So it turned around and attacked the control tower where the operators were. Because in the AI's mind, it said to itself, okay, well, if I cancel the person who gave the order, then I don't have to cancel the order and I can follow through. That was the AI's logic. Fortunately for them, they weren't really armed. But can you imagine? Can you imagine? Get ready for the Terminator, huh? Unbelievable. As we kick around here, Dragon says the Ivy Leagues used to mean something back in the day. Now they're a joke. True. Zane says she cheated on her test and changed the rules to stay in power. Yeah, just like Captain Kirk. Tiberius Kirk cheated. They on his test. They revealed that in Wrath of Khan. For those of you who are into the nostalgia, and Keisha made a $5 donation to the channel. Thank you, Keisha. Very much appreciated. Dusty appreciates it. She walked out of the room, so she can't tell you, but I'm sure she does. Urban says if men can pretend to be women and women can pretend to be men, then why can't unqualified individuals pretend to be university presidents? Yeah, well, and she actually got the job. Yeah, unqualified. They never verified it. And it says the statement seems contradictory. If Gay didn't violate any standards of research, why would she need to correct anything? Nor does the statement reflect what many Harvard affiliates thought the rules were. A webpage on Harvard's own website titled What Constitutes Plagiarism says it is considered plagiarism to draw any idea or any language from someone else without adequately crediting that source in your paper. Does that mean that almost by definition inadequate citation constitutes plagiarism? Question mark. So on Harvard's website, under the definition what constitutes plagiarism, what she did counts as plagiarism, but they won't clarify it. They're changing the definition. You can't trust that. And H12 says Kobayashi Maru. That's right, the Kobayashi Maru test. That's correct. And Gary says key colleges like Harvard and Yale are bully pulpits that indoctrinate American youth. Hollywood, music industry, comic books, sports, etc. are all co-opted bully pulpits. Yes, indeed. Did she plagiarize? Sure, she did. Is she going to get in trouble? Remains to be seen. It remains to be seen. It depends on how far things are going to continue to get pushed, whether or not Harvard is actually willing to take a stand. But as it stands, she should already be suspended and under investigation. Now that it's been revealed, now that they've already examined it themselves, their board has already examined it, realizes. But there you go. They're not willing to follow it up because they want to keep checking boxes. And that's a point that I brought up last week. It seems like every time I read anything about any of these institutions, they're headed by a diversity female. So she checked a bunch of boxes for Harvard, and they're not willing to overlook that. They'd rather check boxes than have somebody qualified. Unfortunately, that's what it's come down to. Zane says this has permanently damaged the integrity of the institution of Harvard. If they allowed it to go in, or I guess he means unchecked, it'll permanently devalue it. And Gary says draconian rules for the booty, but not for my liberal booty. And Dragon says 2 + 2 = 5. Oh, you've been reading 1984. Harvard's alteration of the definition of plagiarism is just the beginning. Well, we've seen definitions change. I've done last year I did a couple of videos, or even the year before, because I've caught the definition changing, like the definition of what was it, an oligarch? Because I was looking it up, and then I went back to my research the next day, and they had changed the definition to include Russian. that wasn't there before. And if you grab an older dictionary, you don't find it there. And I did a video on that. And I've done videos like that before where you're watching definitions changing in real time. All People says top universities in the United States have redefined everything related to qualify and success in order to artificially ascend the status of Black post 65 migrants and offspring. Okay, All People. That's a big pet peeve of All People's, actually. As we move around here, and we're going to bounce to the next door neighbor, we're going to go from Massachusetts to New York, which is not so easy to do if you're driving. Getting in and out of New York is hard. And this is the New York Post. We're going to talk about Mayor Adams. It says Mayor Adams is open to tax hikes and layoffs to close the $7 billion New York City budget gap. Everything is on the table. Everything but the right thing, I'm sure. Big Apple Mayor Adams has kicked open the door to tax hikes and city layoffs, blaming the Biden administration for the threatened wallop to taxpayer wallets. Adams has said his administration is struggling to close New York City's expected $7 billion budget gap next year, given whopping migrant costs, and adding Sunday that the federal government has been AWOL in terms of financially helping with what is a nationally created problem. It's your fault too, Adams. You can blame the government if you want to, but your hand is in there. His owner asked specifically during a Channel 11 interview about possible property tax hikes and the layoff of city workers to help balance the city budget. And he responded, everything is on the table. If you are a homeowner and you have budgeted yourself for the rent, your electricity, your water, etc., then all of a sudden your roof caves in, your insurance policy should pick up on that, Adams said. Our insurance policy was the federal government. They're not paying us, he said. In terms of raising taxes, while state lawmakers in Albany control the income and sales tax rates in the 5 boroughs, the city can hike property taxes, although within limits set by the state. Our insurance policy was the federal government. They're not paying us, Adams said of New York City budget woes. William Farrington, Adams, asked about raising property taxes, particularly on the wealthy, replied, everything is on the table. That's all I can say. So he's helped to create a problem, Adams has, because regardless of how the laws are structured, he didn't have to let those people in there. He didn't have to push for that type of agenda in government for all of these so-called migrants. They're actually illegal aliens, the majority of them. He didn't have to poke fun at Texas and Arizona and other border areas for having difficulty in managing the crisis and being overwhelmed and being heavily burdened and being a burden on taxpayers. He didn't have to mock them and make fun of them and point the finger. And now that it's his problem, he's sitting there crying. Oh, the federal government has to bail us out. Regardless of whether the federal government taxes the constituents of New York or Mayor Adams does, they're still going to pay for it. Oh, I can't get a handout from the government, so I'm going to burden the citizens even further, is his position. That's the state of the union, folks. Zane says, yeah, it seems like when you enforce bad ideas, you ask for a bailout. Helter said Adams will happily call someone a plantation owner and cry racism when he's criticized, so it's obvious he doesn't give a damn about people's opinions. And Gary said, fixing liberal city budgets is like trying to diaper a cat. You can do it, but you have to knock them out first. Rodney says, much of the so-called leadership throughout the Western nations have their heads up their rear ends at best. At worst, they're actively working against their own constituents. Correct. And again, you see that all across the Western world right now. At least in a communist country, they don't lie to you about it. They just screw you over. I just say, we're going to mess you up. If China does it, it's like, oh, well, here comes the Chinese government again. Over here, The term is they're going to piss on your back and tell you it's raining. And it's the same thing in New Zealand where Rodney is. It's the same thing in Australia and the UK. Most of Western Europe, most of South America, Canada, a lot of places this is happening. Dragon says New York City doesn't owe these migrants anything. What is Adams' end game by destroying all the services for taxpayer citizens at the expense of funding migrants? To prove he can do it, I guess, to prove he can accomplish it. But it's backfiring. He's hurting his constituents. And again, these people need to be sent back where they came from. Nothing personal, but we can't take care of you. We have to look after our own first. And as I keep saying, there's nothing unethical or immoral about looking after your own people first. That's what people like this are hired to do. Mayor Adams is not there to babysit the whole world. Mayor Adams is there to take care of the citizens of New York City. Okay? That's the job. Take care of the people, take care of their needs first, not their wants. I know needs and wants look the same to most people, but they are not the same. Needs first. What needs to be taken care of? An adequately funded and trained fire department, EMTs, police, good, decent roads, water and sewage. There's a lot of things that are very important that are getting overlooked while you do this. While you take care of everyone else from all over the world, funneling their way through New York, and then you want to cry about it and ask for more money. And when you can't get it because the federal government is strapped to the limits from doing the exact same damn thing, you're going to take it out on your constituents by raising taxes and laying off essential workers. Raccoon says, I doubt celebrity penthouses will go up in rent. He'll tax the poor areas. You get more money out of taxing the poor areas because the ultra rich are a very small minority of people. Regardless of how it looks in the media, they're no matter how much you tax them, you can never get enough. But if you tax a whole pile of people a little more, you'll get a lot more than you would by taxing a small group of people even a lot. All people's talking about universities, affirmative action, pass fail grading marks rejected by the continental slave descendants to artificially ascend status. H12 said it would have been cheaper to fly them back to Mexico and then cancel your sanctuary city status. An argument I've been making all along, it would be far less expensive to just charter flights. Charter flights, set it up. And most of these governments that these people are coming from will be willing to repatriate them. They have said so. We'll repatriate the people if you can get them back to us. If you can get them back to us, we'll take them. For those that won't, you can leave them nearby. All you got to do is make the right kind of bribe to whoever's in charge at the airport, especially in South America. I mean, bribes are expected. Preparedness says many will leave the city. It sounds like it's turning into a real hole. It has been for quite a long time. And Zane says, I don't mind migration as long as it's legal. Yeah, I mean, do it the right way if you're coming. Do it the right way. Nature Nerd says Dominican Republic is building a high-tech wall with Haiti. So, of course, hundreds of thousands of Haitians are crossing to the U.S. border. The whole country is controlled by violent gangs. Yeah, and those two have been at each other's throats forever. Zane says, I understand that for people living in third world countries, it's next to impossible to get a passport, let alone a visa legally. Urban says Harvard and other Ivy League schools have been paid for play for some time. There have been scandals after elite parents paid universities to accept the dumb kids into any program. I remember that. And one more here. Gary says open borders allow a stealth invasion to occur. And that in Europe they used refugees. Yeah, and that started in Europe in what, 2015 or 2017 is when they started doing that, unfortunately. And while we're still talking about government corruption, you'll love this next one. You'll love this next one. Oh, Nature Nerd says also the U.S. military is intervening to stabilize Haiti with a legitimate government instead of gangs. When they stabilize Haiti with a legitimate government, is that government willing to overlook the $5 billion that they never got from the Clinton Foundation after the donations were made? Just asking. Just wanted to throw that out there because they never did get that money. And nobody knows what happened to it. Nobody knows. State of the Union article. It says government unions spent over $500 million backing Democrats, the left, during midterm elections. Commonwealth Foundation's analyst revealed that four largest public sector unions spent nearly $700 million, with about 60% coming from union dues to support Democrats and leftist causes during the 2022 elections. The report highlighted how union PAC dollars went to various leftist groups and Democrat candidates with significant contributions to individuals like Governor Josh Shapiro and Georgia's Senator Raphael Warnock. I was wondering how he could afford all that advertising. The union's close ties to President Joe Biden were also noted. The report emphasized that the union's political spending heavily favored Democrats, with the most spending occurring in states like guess which ones? Illinois, California, and Pennsylvania. Commonwealth Foundation Senior Fellow for Labor Policy David Osborne said any progressive organization that you can think of is probably getting something from unions. What unions often try to hide is the fact that membership dues can be used for politics. Adding, the union doesn't really have to tell its membership what its money is going to go to. It doesn't have to take a vote on it. By and large, what they do is take the money and then shovel a bunch of it over to a super PAC. Sometimes it's affiliated with the union so that they can do all kinds of political spending that members will never find out about. When employees learn that their dues are being used to fund political projects, that's a value in of itself. There are some things that they can do as individuals to cut off the funding if they desire, Osborne said. In total, PACs tied to the four largest government unions contributed to 282 candidates for the House of Representatives. Of those, 273 were Democrats, 7 were Republicans, and 1 was a third-party candidate, and 1 was independent. I wonder if that one independent was Bernie Sanders. I wonder. It says, armed with millions of members and numerous spending privileges, the four largest unions have dedicated significant financial resources towards maintaining and expanding the legal structures from which they derive their power. You know what I wish they had done in this article, though? Name those four unions, because I don't see them. Just looking through the last paragraph here, skimming it real quick, I do not see which unions are the four government unions that are being referenced here in this particular article. Again, this is a State of the Union article indicating that $700 million was donated in 2022 to political campaigns, with majority, like 90+% going to Democrats. More than that, even, actually, when you look at the numbers, 282 candidates for the House of Representatives, and only 7 were Republicans. So it's a lot more than 90%. And that 60% of that 700 million came right out of union dues without the union members even knowing about it, even having any idea. Brian says, what's your thoughts on building the wall? Building the wall in Haiti or building the wall in the United States? I'm all for a wall. Any country has the right to build a wall and defend itself from its neighbor or from being molested by that other country. I think I brought it up before. I know I've mentioned it because we've talked about Haiti just recently in particular, that M&M's Mars is under fire because of slave labor practices collecting cocoa beans. And I said, well, that sort of thing has happened before. Haiti, and this was in the 80s, Domino Sugar was under fire because Haiti and their neighbor kidnap people from each other all the time and force them to work as slave labor in their sugarcane fields. And it was resolved, but to a point, because that sort of practice still goes on down there and in other countries, in Africa especially. So, I mean, if they need to build a wall to keep the neighbors out, I don't have a problem with it. Donna says it would be even cheaper not to open the gate and let them in, but there's a lot of money for someone in drugs and illegals. That's true. Gary says the globalist agenda needs to pit people against each other and import artificial chaos in order to justify a one world government. Yeah, there's a big argument for that. And Rodney says it seems the unions are paying for their own misery. And Nature Nerd says real life lore made a documentary called Why Haiti is Dying and the DR is Booming. And Helter said basically a portion of the taxpayer money that pays these employees gets laundered through unions to support political causes that many Americans oppose. Yeah, you could say that. And Sven said unions support Democrats. Democrats offshore American jobs. Union members complain and don't change the leadership. But again, as was pointed out in the article, the union itself can do that without the union members being aware. They don't know where the money's going. They don't know how it's being spent. They don't know how much, because the union doesn't have to tell them. So the union is working against their own workers. They're working against the people that they are supposed to be representing. And Urban says, not surprising, unions support Democrats. Also of note is the frequent placement of socialist kiosks along the pro-Palestine demonstration routes, handing out socialist literature. Ugh. And Zane said people in third world nations need to start getting laws changed to allow for better access to passports and visas legally. But same problem that you have in the Western world. The people that you would petition, the people that you would complain to get those laws fixed are the ones that are causing the problem. It's like the old argument of, I hear it all the time, oh, we need term limits. We need term limits in Congress. Who's going to vote for those term limits? You? You're not going to vote for it. Congress votes for it, and they're going to say no. They're going to say no. That's the problem. Dragon says these government workers are trying to get more of their constituents elected, so they will increase their power and salary. And then Gary's talking about divide and conquer. Conservatives versus liberals, black versus white, male versus female, old versus young, atheist versus deist, gay versus straight, illegals versus native, and on and on and on. And it is a divide and conquer concept, because the more distracted we are and the more we can't get along and the more we fight over petty bullshit, the more they can get away with, because we're never paying attention to what they're doing. It's like there's a meme that I saw. It makes a lot of sense. And it has Elon Musk at the top and it has Congress at the bottom. And it says, stop worrying about how he spends his money and instead worry about how they spend yours. And Sven says we could build 7 to 10 border walls every year for what it spends on illegal immigration. Correct. Come here. Come here, Granny Smith. Come here. Come here, darling. Here we go. Cat break, everybody. Little Miss Granny Smith. Say hello. You want to say hello to anybody? No. Want to sit with me for a moment? Granny Smith, everybody. Doing better. Elbows healing. As we move around here, Nature Nerd says independent party should be called the Socialist Party. And Zane says we do have term limits in Congress. Yeah, it's called when you die, you can leave Congress. Urban says if you ever sat through a union member voter meeting, then you know most will vote for whatever protects their own job security in the near future, and only their near future. Yeah, I've tried to set through those meetings, and it was a lot of political rhetoric and just gobbledygook, and I didn't care for what they were saying. I didn't believe what they were saying, and I just stopped going because I didn't give a damn. You just take my money anyways and do whatever the hell you want. Why are you pushing my chin? Do whatever they want, and they talk about some of the twin speak, man. They have like these code phrasing and stuff. For some reason, they like to do that, especially the Teamsters. They have this weird coding language that they speak in sometimes, and I don't even know what they're saying. And you have like a paper. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't care what you're talking about. Yes, hi, Granny. There she is again. Hey, darling, being a good girl today. And Eric Peter says, do you ever just get to the point where you just say, hell with it? I only have X amount of years left. I have no control over what happens. That's how a lot of people feel. They feel like it's completely out of control. So why should I bother? Why should I care? Why should I do anything? And I do understand that, because you have to wonder, what's the point? What's the point? My vote doesn't count. The people that do get voted for don't listen. You want to get down? Okay. Okay. You can get now. Here you go. Here you go. Good girl. Yeah, it can feel hopeless, and you just don't give a damn anymore. You see a lot of people like that, and I do understand that. I do understand that. And Ghost Wolf says, howdy, boss. Howdy, Granny. Yep. Little Miss Granny Smith there with her damaged elbow. She may still never, may never walk properly after it heals, because it just same thing like with Miss Kitty with her broken leg, never healed properly. Nature Nerd says, what's your thoughts on El Salvador locking up tens of thousands of gang members? If that's all they can do to control the situation, I don't have a problem with it. Just short of executing them all, which of course would create an international incident, because then the UN would be like, no, that's too much. Urban says the coding language you mentioned is called Orwellian passive speech. Yeah, I didn't even want to try to understand what the hell they were talking about. I didn't care. I just got sick of listening to them. I was like, what are these people talking about? This is pointless. And you're not going to listen to me any more than management does. And you're supposed to be the advocate for management. You take my money. I don't know what the hell you do with it. And once too often, I've read articles where people in high positions in unions have stolen tons of money. And I mean hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars. And it is not recovered. Preparedness says, unless people are actually willing to dethrone these idiots at many levels, from mayor to president, the only actual power in the vote, red or blue voting over the years, hasn't worked. No, it does not. Oh, and there is Semper Fi. Glad you could make it. Gary says, apathy comes from excessive individualism. When you're interested in family and community, you can't afford to be apathetic. Good point. Stupid news of the day. This is up for vote in Congress today. And I'll tell you why I think it's stupid. This is NBC News reporting on this. Senators push for salon workers to be trained to spot signs of domestic violence. Basically, they want to make salon workers mandated reporters. Mandated reporters. It says Washington, Nashville hairstylist Suzanne Post didn't come to terms with her own abuse relationship until she confided in another person. Hold still. It was when someone said the words, "This is abuse," that I actually took the time to research and find out what that was outside of the physical signs. She tells NBC News in an interview Wednesday. Knowing firsthand how tight-knit the relationship between cosmetologists and their clients can be, Post turned her trauma into healing and launched Sheer Haven, an online course that teaches salon and barbershop workers how to spot signs of domestic abuse. Okay, I don't want to hear about all that. I want to hear about the vote. Her program has since inspired a statewide law mandating domestic violence prevention training courses for salon professionals across Tennessee. Illinois and Arkansas have similar laws, and now a bipartisan duo in the Senate wants to make it available across the United States. Senators Marsha Blackburn and Tammy Duckworth are introducing a legislation on Monday, the Salon Stories Act, that would incentivize. Oh, come on. I hate when it does this. Hold on a second. It would incentivize all 50 states to implement what has worked so well in theirs. The bill provides grant money to states that require a prizing cosmetologist to take a domestic violence prevention training course to obtain their license. Salons are great places for women to have conversations that they wouldn't sit down to have with male colleagues, that they would have at a lunch meeting, Blackburn said in a joint interview with Duckworth in the U.S. Capitol. Under their legislation, each state that receives federal grant money could select their own training courses to be implemented by nonprofit organizations in their area. So they're trying to oh, yeah. So let me see. Zane says, make people in my profession into reporters. Nature Nerd says, salon workers talk to their clients so they already know all the drama. Zane says, I know how bad that could be. Rodney says, senators push for salon workers to be communist snitches so they can be used against their political enemies. And Raccoon said, fashion police. Yeah. Dragon says, who's going to pay for the training? Taxpayer dollars. They already are required to have more training than a cop. And Gary says, turn in your neighbor for the state, for the KGB, you will be rewarded. Zane says, especially when many of my colleagues from Cosmo School were just getting out of jail. Yeah. And Helter says, salon workers already know the signs of domestic violence and see it regularly. What they're really pushing for is to require salon workers to report it. They just want to do their jobs. Yeah. They're trying to make them into mandated reporters. I've been a mandated reporter several times in the past. It's not glamorous at all when you're in the position of the state requiring you to make reports. Also, when you're dealing with something like this, you could make a mistake and really screw that person's life up. You could decide to be vindictive and really screw that person's life up. And I have seen that happen where people have made stuff up, have invented a problem, lied about something to cause problems for somebody. This is a huge can of worms to try to turn salon workers into mandated reporters. Plus, it's a burden on them. Also, that could backlash to the salon worker, because part of the whole thing with being a mandated reporter is that you're supposed to be anonymous. So like when I was at the daycare, if I reported on a kid, the social worker who does the investigation can't say, David ratted on you. That can't happen. Or the daycare said something. They're not going to say that. But if the only person you talk to is your hairdresser, you'll know who did it. And that could be dangerous. Even if it's the truth, you could have somebody retaliate, and it can get really dangerous really quickly. And Gary says, walk into the door, get a health and welfare check. It's insane. Raccoon says, what about bartenders? They hear all kinds of stories. Now they need to be shrinks too. Speak louder into your Bud Light, said Gary. Yeah. And Zane says that'll get many people out of salons. There's nothing glamorous about being a mandated reporter. Often you're not really helping anybody. It can still be covered up. Many of you have heard my story, or you've seen the video about when I worked at the daycare and the kid with the burns, and how they knew somebody that helped them erase the problem. They got away with it. The parent got away with it, with burning the kid with a car lighter. It's terrible. But this is the state that we're in. And they love that. They see something, say something mentality of the state They love that. The government loves that. They love people ratting on each other and stirring up mess. Zane says any and all social jobs might become vectors for mandated reporters. Yeah, and this does swing the door open even wider to other areas, other jobs. And this is something that's been brought up before, because I've been questioned about that. People have asked me, hey, you were subjected to abuse when you were a kid. Why are you against social workers? Because I've seen the wrong end of that. I've seen the damage that social workers can do in my personal life and in my professional life, working for juvenile justice, working for the daycare, working for the school bus company, working with public schools, as well as my own personal experience with my kids, with custody, with the courts, with conciliators and case managers and social workers and child protective and all the rest of it. Often they end up doing more harm than good. They latch onto somebody like a rabid dog. They could be completely off base. They could be completely wrong, but they're not going to let go. They're not going to let go. Many of you have probably, you may recall, because I'm sure I've brought it up before, when I was working for JJA, I had a secretary that worked for me who she had two daughters, and her uncle was arrested for child molestation, and the social workers wanted to interview her kids. She had the two young daughters, and she was like, but I haven't seen that guy in years. They don't know him. 2 years later, they're still coming around trying to interview the kids. They come around like every 6 to 8 weeks, wanting to privately interview the children. And she can't get them off her back, even with an attorney, had not been able to get them off her back. There's nothing there, but they won't let go. They very often cause more problems than they solve. And it's one of those things where they try to justify it by saying, well, if I can just help one person. If you helped one person and screwed up 60 families, you're not balancing it. You're not. You destroyed the lives of 60 families, and maybe one family there was a real problem and you helped out. That's how it looks from my perspective, again, from my own personal and professional experience. It's it just doesn't justify to me. And the more that they're involved, the worse it gets. The more government's involved in anything, the worse it gets. The more you spread around like this, especially with the concept of mandated reporters and getting social workers involved in things, it's a huge can of worms. Gary says Germans turned in their neighbors who hid Jews. Yeah. And Mandanimal says only her hairdresser knows for sure. There you go. I remember that commercial. Gary says, why recruit neighbors when your smartphone is ratting you out 24/7? Well, you need you need a warrant to access the smartphone, unless you're on Ring. Something I've warned people about before. I think it's Ring and certain of those other camera systems. You're automatically enrolled in like a neighborhood watch kind of thing, and the police can access those cameras at any time without knowledge or consent, unless you opt out. So if you're using a doorbell camera system, you should see if they have that program and you're opted into it. And Zane says smartphones are not as accurate as a person. Urban says, interesting you refer to social workers as sometimes being like rabid dogs. That's what I too have seen in the past. Once they latch into a jugular, they don't let go of an innocent parent. No, they're concerned. They're absolutely convinced. They will convince themselves that they're right. They won't admit that they're wrong. And even when they're caught and called out on it, they won't admit it. They won't back off. And that's the unfortunate reality. I think they do more harm than good. Like I said, personal experience and professional experience with juvenile justice, with the daycare and so on, and my own personal experience dealing with family court and things like that, they've been horrible. They've been horrible, and they've made things worse. Anyways, with that, I'll go ahead and wrap up. There's Dusty sleeping in the chair, so it's time to go. And Paul, you're late. He says, from the People's Republic of New Jersey, and keeping his head on a swivel. So I'll go ahead and start wrapping up. Again, you have been watching and or listening to Coffee Talk, and you can find me at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube as well as Prepper University. Please do give me a sub there if you are able to, as well as at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter, and fistfulofradio.com, where you can find Coffee Talk podcasting Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. Special thanks, of course, to Keisha, who made a donation to the channel today. Thanks again, Keisha. Very much appreciated. Every little bit goes a long way. And again, thanks to everybody who was able to join us here today in the live portion. Hope you got something out of the conversation, and we will catch you again tomorrow.